What's up, Star Wars fans? Welcome back to Battle Station Radio. I'm your host, Kate Ellsworth. Joining us on the show today is my good friend and host of the Cinematic Stories podcast, Thomas Olsen. Thomas, it's good to have you on the show as the first guest of the relaunched podcast.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me, Kate. I'm really excited to be here, and it's always a pleasure to talk Star Wars with you. So,
Yeah, of course. I've
uh,
been excited to talk about Ahsoka with someone. And that brings
yeah,
us into what we're going to be discussing today. So today we're going to be talking about the latest Star Wars live action series, which is Ahsoka, and that premiered 2 weeks ago as a two-part premiere. And since then, the third episode has also come out. So we're just going to discuss this, all the discourse going on the internet, theories, and stuff like that. So the first thing we're going to talk about is, um, Ahsoka has really positioned itself as sort of the sequel series, bonus season 5 of Star Wars Rebels. And Thomas, I'm assuming you've seen Star Wars Rebels all the way through.
I have. Yep, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So,
Admittedly, I haven't watched it in a while. Like, I've only, like it's gone through all of it, but I'm really familiar with it. But as a Star Wars fan, I wish I could spend more time watching it.
yeah,
But
I rewatched Rebels with my wife Summer about 2 years ago, so she's all caught up as
oh,
well.
cool,
I'm assuming
nice.
if you haven't seen Rebels, then Ahsoka is a little bit confusing.
I actually have a friend that had never seen Rebels, and he's actually starting to watch it now. But he's Yeah, it's a little bit confusing, but I think they do. He said they do a decent enough job, like getting you like somewhat caught up to speed with
Getting
the
you
major plot
acquainted with
points.
the
So,
characters, yeah. All right,
mhm.
so, knowing that it's sort of a continuation of the story told in Star Wars Rebels, we're going to talk about how we think, these characters have been translated into live action as far as who they cast and things like that. So, Thomas, I guess I'll just ask you how are you feeling they've replicated these characters in live action?
So far I feel like they're doing fairly well. I think they casted everyone like super great. I think they all like looked the part, and all of that, like the look, the costumes, everything. Like I feel like is on point. Um, my only thing, and I don't know if how what you feel about this, and I've seen some other people, and it's not like a complaint per se, but I feel like that Ahsoka and Sabine, their characterization feels a little stiff so far. Or maybe it's just the acting, and it could be a deliberate choice too. I've heard some people kind of have that theory. So it's not like like I said, I'm not like that. It's still the show has still been very great, and I've been
Yeah,
enjoyed
it's
it, and
not
I
like
feel
a
like they've
not
done a
like a
good
deal
job.
breaker or anything.
Yeah, it's just more of an observation, I guess, at this point, and kind of curious to see how that plays out throughout the season. But
Yeah,
I
I've
mean, I
also
think
noticed
they've over.
that
Oh, go ahead.
Ahsoka seems, and part of the defense of that is like she's older and wiser and more
Hmm.
stoic. But I honestly,
Right.
I don't feel like we're seeing lots of her Clone Wars self in the character. Like, I hope they introduce some of her because she was a piece of work at times, right? Very reckless, like her master Anakin. And I hope they bring some of that other aspect of her personality into it.
Yeah, I feel like she's very playful, like with I mean, maybe that's like the youthful aspect of her character, but
Uh-huh.
like you see that in like her relationship with Anakin and Obi-Wan and other characters throughout the show. So, yeah, I kind of hope we see a little bit more of that like spunky attitude a bit that she had. But I mean, overall though, I'm very pleased and excited with what they're doing. So,
Yeah, I feel like you really couldn't ask for better casting as far as, translating these
yeah,
characters. And I think I like all the costumes are pretty solid. Star Wars Rebels, the art style is so colorful, and I feel like they tried to bring some of that over into live action, which I
yeah,
appreciate. And yeah, so I think it'll take time to acquaint ourselves to these characters in their live action, version. And maybe then we'll feel like they're a little less stiff and things like that.
yeah.
I've seen some people criticizing like the choice for Hera, but I think it's hard to. Right, Hera has such a look to her in Rebels that's pretty alien and not human. So I
Yeah.
feel like it would be actually more of a challenge to cast her and bring her in. And I feel like if I like listen to the show and I, you know, am trying to hear their dialogue in their Rebels voices, it all sounds like something they'd say.
Mhm.
It's not like they've changed the characters.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I see. I've actually found Hera to be probably like one of the most faithful, I guess, if you will, like the best translations to me. I mean, maybe it's because she's not in it as much. I don't know, but I've enjoyed her character a lot on the show.
Yeah, as far as characterization, I feel like they really nailed her dialogue and how she looks
Yeah.
and feels, where she kind of is stern, sort of a mother
Yeah.
figure to Sabine, and then she's
Hmm.
also not afraid to be like, "Really? Are you serious with Ahsoka?"
Hmm.
and
Right.
kind of scold her in that way. I liked
Yeah. Kind of how they
that they
called
brought
both out.
Jason Sindula in. That was cool.
Hmm.
Her and
Yeah,
Kanan's
that was fun.
kid.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think we both in agreement that they did a pretty good job of that.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's been really cool seeing Chopper back as well. That was another like
Yeah,
fun
Chopper was
addition.
awesome. Very snarky.
Yeah.
I wonder if
That
because
I was just gonna say that definitely feels like the most direct like it feels the seamless.
uh
Probably
and
easier because it's like a
I feel
robot,
like I
but
remember Dave Filoni being the voice of Chopper in Rebels,
yeah, I think so.
and I
Hmm.
wonder if he's continued doing that. That would be interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the only not even a complaint I have about the live action is that Sabine seems to have taken a step back as far as character development. Like I feel like she went through all this lightsaber training and feeling like she wasn't good enough with Kanan, right? And I feel like they've sorted in that episode where she's training with the dark saber, and I feel like they've a little bit ignored that and sort of made her more childish and stubborn than I think she would be at this point in her life. But again, very minor nitpick. I think they've done a great job.
Yeah, I feel like there's definitely like some backstory that I mean there's like a bit of fallout between her and Ahsoka that I don't feel like they fully explored. So I'm really
Uh-huh.
curious to like find out more what that is. So
Yeah, I
excuse
guess
me.
I
But
guess we can jump into our next topic, which is about that. So, at the end of Rebels, we see Ahsoka, and she comes in her little ship, and Sabine is doing her voiceover in the finale of Star Wars Rebels, and she goes off with Ahsoka. And right, obviously that was the first time she went off with Ahsoka, and obviously it didn't go well, considering all the backstory they've given us, right? And I've seen some people on the internet confuse like they were maybe recreating that scene, but I'm like, no, this is she went with her years ago, and now this is
yeah.
trying again. So I appreciate how they right. You assume it's going to be following that scene, and then they, I don't know, subvert expectations, right, and have you say, "Oh, that actually didn't work out too well," and now here we are trying to find Ezra again.
Right. Yeah, I'm very curious to see like what went on between that time, and I think um it's yeah, there could be some really compelling storytelling with that. So it's hard to like I don't know. I don't feel like I have a lot of ideas of what it could be to like speculate, but
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I
it'll
get
be
that.
interesting though. Yeah.
So, as far as we've taken these characters that we know and love, and we've thrown them into live action. But then we also get, as far as a new series goes, we get new villains, right? We get new characters introduced, and two of the most compelling characters I think have been introduced are Balin Skull and his apprentice Shin Hati, and I feel like they're almost more interesting to me than Ahsoka and Sabine and Hera, just because we haven't seen them
Yeah.
before and we have so much to learn about them. So I was just wondering, what are your initial thoughts on these two characters?
I agree with you. They're like easily the most fascinating part of the show. And this last episode, are we doing spoilers or
Yeah,
for
yeah. So
okay.
here we go. We'll do our spoiler notice. So if you listeners have not seen all three episodes of Ahsoka, stop listening, go on Disney Plus, watch it right now, and then come back.
Awesome. Okay. And so Balin, we didn't really see him till the end. And I was like the whole episode kind of like, oh man, where is he? Where's he at?
Yeah.
Because like, yeah,
Uh-huh.
he's so fascinating. And Ray Stevenson, the actor who, unfortunately just passed away recently, um, like he just is so interesting to me. He has a great screen presence and like what is his history, like, and then, um, why am I forgetting her name? Sorry. His
Shin,
apprentice.
Shin.
Huh?
Her
Yes.
name,
Yes. Shin. She is like super interesting too. And like it was great to see her in like doing piloting the ship and stuff like that, that space battle in this last episode, and And then her lightsaber fight with Sabine, and I mean their introduction. I loved how that was like it almost felt like a reverse thing of like what we saw in the intro of the Phantom Menace, so where you got Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan on the Trade
Yes.
Federation ship,
Yeah.
and like
I
this felt like
as they
almost
were
like a
Yeah,
of
that
that.
first scene, there's definitely been a lot of prequel like echoes of the prequels, and I thought that
Yeah.
same thing as they were pulling into that hangar. I was like, wait, this is almost like, switched roles of when they Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon go onto the Trade Federation ship in Phantom Menace.
Hmm.
And I also noticed, I think in the second episode where Shin's little probe droid comes up to her on the hill on
Yeah.
Lothal, that was exactly like when Maul's probe droid comes up. So I like all those little
Yeah,
callbacks
that
to the
was so
prequels.
cool.
Those are cool.
So yeah, I mean, I'm so excited to find out who they are and more of their story. I'm like I'm like praying and hoping that it's not going to be one of those things where like they don't reveal it in the season because sometimes I feel like shows have the
Uh-huh.
tendency to do
Yeah.
that, and so I'm just like no, please answer that. Don't give us more questions. But so far they're definitely like easily the most captivating part of the show for me.
Yeah. I feel like Balin has such like he's almost like has the presence of like an old stage actor or something. He just
Yeah,
totally takes over any scene he's in. Really has
he's
a
like
cool aura
he's
about
almost
him.
like Count Dooku-esque to me, which I
Yeah.
think Count Dooku is a great character, even though we don't
Very
get a ton
cool and
with him in the
collected.
movies. But yeah,
Yeah. I think one of the things interesting about these new characters is, and my wife noticed this, which is crazy because she had never seen Star Wars before we got married, and now she's fully
Hmm.
indoctrinated, of course.
Hmm.
And she noticed that Shin has a Padawan braid in Ahsoka,
Yeah,
which is awesome to me. It's like a dark, you know, dark Jedi-ish stuff. I feel
yeah,
like they're having Ahsoka and Sabine is more the light side people, and then they have this dark counterpart, which is Balin and his apprentice with the Padawan braid. And it's right, they're not espousing Jedi ideals or anything because they're murdering people left and right, but it's almost like a dark version of he's training her in the Jedi way, right? Just he's changed it
yeah.
a little bit.
Well, they don't seem like Sith, right? I mean, I don't think that's they're gonna be Sith, and
Yeah,
which
definitely not.
I think is a good choice, and I think that's what's so interesting about what they can do in the Star Wars universe is explore all these different facets of Force users, and like even Ahsoka is technically not a Jedi,
Yeah,
and
she's
like I like that
more of a gray
they
Jedi.
touched on that. Yeah, they kind
Yeah.
of touched on it a little bit in her past of how she left the Order and even like with Sabine, maybe if I'm jumping ahead here, but like her, does she have the force? Can she access the force or not? Like that to me is a fascinating thing to explore. And like I remember when the Force Awakens came out, the title thinking that was going to be like a big idea that they're going to explore in the movie, and they don't fully go into that too much. And
Uh-huh.
so I like that this show seems to be doing that. And Balin and Shin like yeah, there's so many different ways they can go with it, and my brother Matt, so I'm going to give him the credit for this. Um I don't one of his theories with Shin is that she could be a clone of potentially either Anakin or even Luke, because in the book Heir of the Empire, which there's rumors that there's talks of bringing some of those story elements or those ideas into this series, is like there was a clone of Luke in that story, and I haven't read Heir of the
Oh
Empire
yes,
to be honest.
yeah,
Matt was
I
telling me
remember
about it, my
that.
brother. So, and he was like, but maybe it could be like a clone of Anakin, because Hayden Christensen is supposedly in the show. And anyway, I love that idea. I'm not gonna like hold on to that and expect that to
Uh-huh.
happen, but it's just fun to like theorize, to have a
That's a really
just
cool
to
idea.
speculate. So,
I feel like one of the most fun parts of Star Wars is when we get introduced to new characters. Those all right. There's an abundance of crazy theories, and it's really
oh
fun to
right, for
speculate.
sure,
Yeah, so
definitely,
I'm enjoying Balin and Shin. I keep telling people when I talk about Ahsoka, I'm like I'd be shocked if they're on the same side as Morgan in the last episode.
yeah,
Like they don't really
I'm with
he
you on
doesn't
that.
really he seems really hesitant to go and engage with Ahsoka and try to kill her, because I feel
Yeah,
like he still has some affinity for the Jedi and things like that.
totally.
One of the cool theories I've seen is that Balin was Plo Koon's apprentice, and that's why he has
Oh,
such an affinity for Ahsoka. Because as we know in the Clone Wars, Plo Koon is the one who discovers her as a baby and brings her to the Jedi, and they have sort of a close bond. And to me, that's a really compelling theory that
I
doesn't
like
really
that.
break
Yeah,
any established canon.
you're right. I like that. That's a cool theory. I never thought about that, but
So I'm really excited to see where they go with these characters. and what we learn about them. So now we get to go to the next new character, which is Marok or something. Balin pronounces it kind of
Yeah.
weird. So we have this mysterious Inquisitor guy. What are your thoughts on him?
He's awesome. I mean, the Inquisitors, I think, are one of the best ideas that have come out of the Disney era of Star Wars, because like the Disney era of Star Wars, I feel like has been mixed for sure with fans,
Uh
and
huh.
but I think Inquisitors is a great idea, and it's a great way, because I always felt like George Lucas, I remember when the prequels came out, it felt like he almost wrote himself into a hole a bit of like there can only be two Sith.
Hmm.
And the concept makes sense, but I think this is a great, in a way, it's almost like a loophole to introduce other like Sith
Uh
or
huh.
Dark Jedi
Yeah.
like adversaries for the Jedi to go against. Because that's to me one of the best things about Star Wars is a good lightsaber battle. Like that's one of my favorite things.
Exactly.
And so when Rebels introduced Inquisitors, that was genius. And then to see them carry over into like to the video games and into like shows like Obi-Wan and
Hmm.
now here we get like the last remnants of that. And yeah, I mean, it's so fun that once again you said new characters and speculation. Like, I mean, there's so many ideas of where this character, who this character could be, what it could be. Maybe he's just like a henchman, and literally
Uh
he's
huh.
just there to like for us to see some cool like adversary Ahsoka against, and maybe there's not
Uh
much
huh.
more depth to it. I'm okay with that. I hope there's more, but I'll accept that as well.
Uh huh.
But so far he's been that lightsaber fight with Ahsoka, and I think it was the second episode was great. So I'm really excited to see more of him
And
or
plus the
her.
fact he's more interesting by the fact that he actually fought Ahsoka for 2 minutes and didn't
Yeah.
die, right? Because she
Hmm.
totally just bodies Inquisitors left and right in Star Wars Rebels and
Oh
in
yeah,
the Tales of the
and then
Jedi.
sorry, yeah, Tales of the Jedi. Yes, that's like one of my favorite.
Where it's like a
One
3 second
of the,
fight, you know,
yeah, and
just totally
it's
destroys
just
them.
amazing to see how quickly she disposes of that Inquisitor.
And I agree with what you said about the Inquisitors. It's a great way to introduce new dark side characters because there wouldn't be much content in Rebels if Darth Vader was the enemy, right? Because
Right.
he would just kill Kanan and Ezra and not even. It would just be a regular Tuesday for him, right?
Yeah. And I think the Rebels used Darth Vader perfectly. They used him sparingly,
Yep.
made him very intimidating, but like at the same time, like it allowed other characters to come in and for the the Rebels, the Ghost Crew to face other people. And so
Uh huh.
I appreciate that. Not only do we have two other really compelling, interesting Dark Jedi or Dark Forcer users, we've got a third in the mix that like there's a lot of interesting stuff to kind of explore with that. So
And I think it speaks to sort of how savvy he is, Marok, that he managed to survive the Empire and is still going
hmm
strong in his Inquisitor outfit, which I think the character design is also really cool. I love kind of
yeah,
the
definitely.
helmet design. The front of the helmet is really cool, and of
Yeah.
course the spinny lightsaber that we all know and love.
Oh, the spinning lightsabers are. I think if I was ever to get a real life lightsaber, I'd want one of the Inquisitor's ones.
Yeah, definitely. And I feel like this character, I just lost my train of thought. I don't know where it went.
We're
Uh,
talking about spinning lightsabers, but I don't know.
yes. Oh, like you said, right? There's like a 50 to 60% likelihood that Marok is just a random Inquisitor, right?
Mhm.
Somebody we've never seen before, and I think I'd be okay with that. Amidst all the speculation, I like to remind people, I'm like, he could all just be a faceless nobody, right? That we've
Yeah,
never heard of before.
I think that's one of the most important lessons a Star Wars fan can learn is like it's okay to speculate, have fun, but also be accepting of like you could be totally wrong and it could be
Uh-huh.
just some rando.
Exactly. That's
Like
exactly
I
right.
think of like someone like the character why am I blanking her name? The in the sequel trilogy, the Chrome Stormtrooper, Captain Phasma, sorry.
Phasma, yeah.
Like that was we saw her in the trailers and she looks incredible. Like the character design was awesome, but then she turned out to be pretty minor and not basically there just to give Finn an adversary, which to me worked and I appreciated that, but would it have been cool to see more for sure, but at the same time like for me, I think that's kind of like how I try to approach it. Like, it's just have fun speculating, but when it's time to watch it, just to like let my expectations go and see whatever they present. So,
Yeah, exactly. I think it's good to not build up your expectations to the point that you're always going to be disappointed.
right.
And as far as building up expectations, as far as Marat goes, obviously his name is similar to Galen Merrick, who is a beloved non-canon character, Starkiller, Darth Vader's apprentice. Apparently, Sam Witwer is in the end credits of Ahsoka, and that has just made the fire of the speculation just go crazy. That this character is some version of Starkiller.
Yeah.
Are
Yeah,
you
I've
thinking
seen
that could be
that
a
too.
possibility?
What was that?
Are you thinking that that could be a possibility?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's definitely possible. I mean, I don't know if that's where they're gonna go. I think it would be a cool nod and it would be a cool like thing for the fans, you know. Um, I've also like heard and read that Sam Wicker, is that his name?
Witwer, I think.
Witwer. Okay. I've read that he does a ton of additional voice work for
Mm-hmm.
Lucasfilm, like across all different Star Wars things. Like
Yep.
he's in the cast of the sequel trilogy as like additional voices and things like that. So a lot of people have said like downplayed it as like, oh, it's just that's just what it is. He's just there for additional backup voice. Maybe that's the case. So once again, I think it would be awesome. I think in your episode you did about speculating who the villains were, I think you threw out like a few theories of like Barriss Offrey as one, right?
Uh-huh, yeah. It could be
That
Beresafi,
could
and
be
I think that
cool.
would be so cool.
Yes, I mean, because that's going to tie right back to Ahsoka and tie up that loose end of her. I mean, whether it's this character or she comes back as her, a different version, like that would be interesting.
Uh-huh.
If I was to pick like my own, like who I wanted it to be, that'd probably be my pick actually, just because I think of kind of like an emotional storytelling that would give Ahsoka and Barriss that character as well. But a good backup or another really great one would be Star Killer. Why am I? Sorry, I'm like terrible with names today.
It's okay. Galen Merrick, yeah, it's Starkiller.
Galen Merrick. Yes, sorry. There we go. Okay,
Yeah, I
but
think I think it's awesome to speculate who Marat could be, right? Even if he takes off his mask, after he gets defeated or something, and it's Sam Witwer, right? It's that little
mhm.
callback. I'd
Oh,
prefer,
that would be
honestly,
cool.
if they were gonna bring back Starkiller, I'd prefer that to be like its own movie slash TV show, and not just shoehorn him into Ahsoka and give him actually the attention he deserves if they chose to bring him back.
Yeah.
Another interesting one I saw today was if you can think back to those episodes where Ahsoka in the Clone Wars, she goes with Huang with those younglings to find their
Mm.
lightsabers on Ilum. And we've seen one of those younglings in, oh gosh, Bad Batch, Gunji, the Wookiee one. But there was also one, I think his name was Pedro. He was sort of one of the more headstrong ones of those younglings that
Mhm.
she went with, and the theory was that he could be an Inquisitor, which would be cool, right? If
Oh
Gunji
yeah.
survived, then another of those group of younglings could have survived, and that would also,
Oh,
bring some emotional storytelling into it. If this is like a
yeah.
youngling that she had contact with, that would be crazy for him to pop back up as a evil Inquisitor.
Yeah, for sure. That's interesting. So it's funny because I've gone through Clone Wars the whole series twice, and then some episodes I've watched more than twice. But when I went through my second watch through of it, I skipped certain story arcs because I was like, I don't know if I this one wasn't my thing, and that was one that I skipped because I was like, it was okay.
Uh-huh.
So now I'm curious to go back and watch it after you said that. So, but
Yeah, right.
yeah,
Well, I
that's
guess we'll
interesting.
find out.
Yeah.
Another question I just thought of is like, so obviously Balin and Shin and Marok are pretty powerful force wielders, right? And then we have Morgan Elsbeth, who's a Night Sister, supposedly. She looks like she has some magical abilities, but it's interesting
Yeah.
the way they defer to her. Like, I feel like she's more powerful and more scary than they've shown so far. Because if these three
Yeah.
characters are loyal to her for some reason, it's got to be that she scares the crap out of them or something.
Yeah, that or it's like they're like you said, they're um in a sense maybe using her to get to their,
Yep. Uh-huh.
like they have a different motive and so they're using her to get to that and so they're kind of letting her run the show because they need her resources.
Yeah, that
That's
makes
kind of
sense.
like my take, but yeah, I mean, or it could be that I like the idea that she's from um
Dathomir.
Dathomir and like has that connection to the Night Sisters. So, but
I think it'd be cool to see her wield some of her Night Sister magic.
Yeah, for sure.
Some of the
Especially in live action,
green
because I don't think
flame
we've
stuff.
gotten that yet, right?
We have not gotten a live action Night Sister yet, which is interesting.
Yeah.
So now that we've gone over some of the new characters, let's talk about some of the more, I don't know, objective ways of measuring a TV series. So pacing, dialogue, things like that. How are you feeling about? Are you feeling like it's too slow? Are you feeling like it's just about right?
Um, I'll admit, I think it can be a little slow at times. I feel like this third episode was paced really well. It ended and I was kind of like, oh, that feels more on par with like where The Mandalorian was at, like
Mhm.
around like 38, 39-minute episodes kind of. And then you have like some longer ones here and there, but I mean, it's not like a huge complaint. Once again, it's just
Uh-huh.
kind of like I noticed in the first one, there was a few times I was like getting distracted by like checking
Mhm.
my phone or something. Where if I was watching this in the theater though, I'd be zoned in for sure, and like
Definitely.
that's just how I am in general. I feel like I get distracted easier at home with the most anything I watch,
Uh-huh.
um, but overall though, I mean, I think it's okay. So the Obi-Wan show, just for an example, like I actually really love the Obi-Wan show. I know that one's mixed reception as well. My biggest complaint is the pacing of that one because I almost feel like that could have been like a 2.5 hour movie instead of a six
Yeah,
episode
uh-huh.
series.
You're exactly
They
right.
could have condensed it potentially. Um, but at the same time, I'm like, I'll take whatever you give me. Like at
Exactly.
the end of the day, like it's Star Wars, and if I could go back and tell my younger self, like, dude, when you're an adult, there's gonna be this whole channel basically devoted to Star Wars, Marvel stuff and you're not even have time to watch all of it sometimes because there's so much.
Yeah.
Like to be honest, I need to finish Bad Batch season 2 still. Like I'm halfway through season 2. I need to catch up on that. And it's hard as an adult. Sometimes we all have
Uh-huh.
jobs and families and stuff but like um yeah, I don't know. I'm enjoying it though and I maybe some minor gripes, but overall I think it's worked for me.
Uh-huh. And I feel like people who, right, not to diss people who feel like this, but I feel like a TV show is not going to be all action all the time because then
Right.
you don't have time to develop the story. And I feel like people,
Yeah.
if there's like 5 minutes of a lull in an episode where no action, they're like, we want more action, and I'm like, TV doesn't work that way, people.
Yeah. And I'll admit, when Mandalorian first came out, I had a hard time with it because I think I'm used to Star Wars being very fast paced because all any Star Wars movie is incredibly fast
Yeah,
paced. And
exactly.
George Lucas, I mean, he changed the game when it came to filmmaking. I mean, because movies didn't have that type of pacing before the original Star Wars, at least not as often. But like I had to like remind myself that this is a TV show and it's gonna be different. It's gonna be a different style format of storytelling, and once I kind of like got over, once I kind of realized that, like you said, I've enjoyed it a lot more. So
Yeah, and I didn't mind episode 3 of Ahsoka being shorter. I felt like it's more of in Dave Filoni's, uh, in his wheelhouse, because he's used to
yeah,
22 minutes on the dot, right, for Clone Wars, and I think his abilities really shine through in this episode. Plus, it didn't need to be a long episode. The episode basically served to get Sabine and Ahsoka onto the planet Cetos, which is where the
right,
big hyperdrive ring is and where Balin and Shin are. So I thought it did its job as an episode, setting up for episode 4, which I'm sure is going to be a doozy.
yeah. Which those space whales were incredible. It was so cool to see those.
Oh, the Purgles are awesome. Yeah, we'll get to those.
Yeah.
As far as the dialogue, another objective, way to kind of look at it, I feel like it was fine. Wasn't anything spectacular like in Andor. I always use one scene in Andor as like the shining example of the dialogue. It's a episode like within the first 3 or 4 episodes where it's an ISB meeting and all the supervisors are sitting, and it's like a 7-minute scene of just people in a white room talking, and it's like riveting. Like I never
Yeah.
found myself getting distracted. It's totally entertaining, and I feel like that's kind of the pinnacle of dialogue. And Ahsoka's
Oh
not
yeah.
as good as that, but it's fine, right? I have no really complaints about it.
Yeah, for sure. It's definitely not if you're making a show like Andor, you need that really crisp and
Yep.
uh interesting dialogue. I mean, there's scenes in Andor where I'd be like, "Oh, right, like it's Mon Mothman talking politics, and I'm like, this is so interesting. Where like,
Yeah.
or like you
Uh-huh.
said, the ISB security count, I can't counts, whatever they're like meeting, like
Yeah,
it's so
whatever they
interesting.
are.
Where like not everything needs to be like that. I love that we have that though in the Star Wars thing. Like that's so cool to me. But
Uh-huh.
like this is not that, and that's okay. And I do feel like there's some good like um like some good humor here and there and things like that that we come to expect from like a Star Wars movie, like some good
Uh-huh.
bantering and things like that. So yeah, and I liked the scene when Hera's meeting with Mon Mothman and like those other senators, and she calls
Uh-huh.
out that one senator. Like
Xeno,
that
I
was
think.
great.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, mhm.
That scene made me so frustrated because I'm like, it's blatantly obvious how the New Republic falls apart by the time Force Awakens happens and the First Order just destroys them
Yeah,
completely, right? It's back to the
right,
same squabbling politics that existed in the Republic, right? It's almost
right,
frustrating because it's like, nothing has changed, right? It's still
hmm
politics and lame.
for sure.
So now we can move on to one of the more divisive choices that they made in Ahsoka, and that's Sabine. Um, I was assuming that she would have gone off with Ahsoka on her adventure, but that would have been the end of their sort of relationship, right? But it turns out that she's sort of a Padawan to Ahsoka, and Ahsoka's sort of teaching her how to be a Jedi, even though Ahsoka herself isn't a Jedi anymore. So what are your thoughts on them positioning Sabine as possibly Force sensitive?
Um, I'm all for it. I mean, I in the trailers they kind of teased that, and so I remember that to me was really compelling when I saw it in the trailers, and I think it's been interesting to see that. Like I said before, like the idea to me, like the Force is such an interesting concept in the Star Wars universe. It's like this energy source that certain people can tap into and certain people can't, and it's like they've never really explored why is that? Like why can a Jedi and Ahsoka kind of hints that like sometimes there's talent involved, I think is how she
Mm-hmm.
says it.
Yeah.
And that makes sense. Like some people just have this gift, like some people you look at even just our own world, like there's people that have like whatever faith you're part of, they have different words for it, like spiritual gifts or
Uh-huh.
whatnot, and some people have abilities to do different things, um and that to me is really interesting that to explore like the Force being that in the Star Wars universe to me. And how does like someone like Sabine, who's a really gifted and talented warrior, like can she access the Force, this higher power, this like elemental thing that can help her do different things, and
Uh-huh.
like and that to me is fascinating. So I love that they're actually gonna like explore that some more. I hope
Yeah.
I hope we get to see more of that going forward, and
Yeah.
like
I
will
feel
she be
like
able to actually tap into it or not? But
yeah. I feel like I'm fine with it as well, as long as they don't take it too far. Like with what Huang has said about her basically being really sucky as a force user,
yeah,
right? Right. I'm thinking more the force could help her do a little bit of, telekinesis, like pulling the cup to her, or have some more combat
yeah.
awareness, or just be better at fighting. Right? I think they've established she's never gonna be on the same level as like an actual Jedi, right? Or even like
Well, to me,
Ahsoka's
what would
level.
be interesting is like, are there different aspects of the Force that some people have greater talents in, like the ability to be a swords, like you master with the lightsaber, for example.
Uh-huh.
Because if I remember right, like I've heard George Lucas say, or Dave Filoni, I don't remember who, like that Mace Windu was one of the best swords or best person with the like duelist with the lightsaber, whereas like Master Yoda was more he had different skills with the Force. And so
Uh-huh.
like is there certain ways that any person in the galaxy could tap into the Force, but not necessarily like do it the way that the Jedi's use it, if that makes
Uh-huh.
sense?
Yeah,
So anyway,
that makes sense. So I feel like it is a cool concept, right? Obi-Wan says in the first Star Wars, right? The Force, it sort of permeates everything and binds the galaxy together. So it makes sense that
right.
any old person, right? I saw a video that was saying like even like someone like Watto, if maybe he trained for 90 years, he might be able to force push something a little bit, right? And so everyone
Yeah,
has the ability in them. It's just about talent, like Ahsoka said, and whether you're willing to put the dedication and the time into training, right?
right. Yeah.
So I think we're both sound like we're on the same page about Sabine. right? I hope they don't make her some uber powerful force user, but I think having her
Yeah,
learn it and be a part of her journey as far as her character develops, I think it's a really cool idea.
yeah, for sure.
So as we sort of come to the end of this interview, we have a few more things to talk about. So the next one, and the thing that honestly I've been really excited about, and it's the thing I've been theorizing about most, is that we're being introduced to another galaxy, right? It's
Yeah.
we're in a galaxy far, far away, but we're about to jump ship and go to another galaxy. And so one of the
Hmm.
coolest things to me is that we're going to go on this journey, and this big ship, this hyperdrive ring, the Eye of Sion, who actually the name is a reference to. So Darth Sion, I think, was in the Old Republic in some form. He was in a few of the games, but apparently he was a
Hmm.
Sith Lord that was so angry and full of rage that whenever he would die, he wouldn't actually die. Like he'd use his anger and hate to sort of rebuild his body again and again. So he's this really
Huh.
scarred, scary looking dude, which I thought it was a clever way of bringing some of the legend stuff into live action.
Yeah.
And then we'll have obviously the Purgles, and they are capable of
Yep.
intergalactic travel, it sounds like. So basically, what are your thoughts on this whole going to another galaxy thing?
I love it. I think that's one of that's like super fascinating. Like what, like what does that look like? What does that mean for the characters and like the universe? And also like, I mean, because you can make the argument that one galaxy is enough. There's enough to explore that why would you need to go to another galaxy? And I get that too. And I still think there's things you can do within the galaxy in it. But
Uh-huh.
like, I don't know. Yeah, there's just a lot of cool ideas, fascinating things you could do. And so, I mean, I'm all for it. I'm excited to see where they go with that.
It almost has like an Indiana Jones type feel, like ancient civilization, you know. I really like that kind of feel, and we
Yeah.
don't get that a
Mhm.
lot in Star Wars. And so the fact that they're going to be taking this huge ship and going to find Thrawn in another galaxy is really awesome.
Even like a Star Trek vibe a bit of like exploring new worlds and new places, the new frontier type stuff.
Uh-huh.
So that's
Yeah,
kind of
because
interesting.
Star Trek is all about exploration, right? And
Right.
every
Yeah.
new creature they run into is new, and they study it, and they have scanners and stuff. And Star Wars is
Right.
more like space travel in the Star Wars galaxy has existed for so much time that it's just
Yeah.
kind of like going on the freeway for us, right?
Yeah.
It's totally normal, and there's not a feeling of really exploration. But this is like deep
Right.
space exploration type stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm
I think
excited to
it's
see how it goes.
cool how they brought like some ancient civilization, kind of used this planet Cetos as sort of a jumping ground, you know, for intergalactic like
Hmm.
hyperspace lanes. And what I'm theorizing is going to happen is the bad guys are going to take the Eye of Sion and blast off, and then the good guys are going to have to use Purgles in some shape or form, like they
Oh
did in
yeah.
Rebels, and sort of, I don't know, hitch a ride on a Purgle to go to the other galaxy.
Yeah. Yeah. That's no. That makes sense.
But one of the things I'm most excited for is to see the Eye of Sion turn on and go into hyperspace. Because it's a huge ring and it has like 7 hyperdrives, and that's just going to be a really cool
Yeah.
scene, I think. And then
Oh,
the
totally.
last thing to talk about, you know, as we go into this new galaxy, obviously, the whole point of this is we're looking for Ezra Bridger and Grand Admiral Thrawn. So, what are you? I'm assuming you're excited to see Thrawn.
Oh yeah.
Are you assuming he's going to? Because I mentioned this in the last episode, right? In Mandalorian, we see the Shadow Council, and Moff Gideon sort of takes charge of that. And it sounds like they're really banking on the fact that Thrawn's going to come back and be loyal to the Empire and want to restore it. What are you thinking his motivations are? Are you thinking he's even wanting to come back? Does he want to go back to his own people? Or what's his motives here? What does he want?
I don't. It's hard to say honestly because I mean he's been gone for what is it like 10 years or so
Yeah.
at this point. Um, I mean, does he know that the Empire has fallen, the Emperor is dead? Like, I don't know if that's been communicated to him. Like, someone sent him a text message or a hologram, out there. But it doesn't seem like they have that ability to. So,
That's
or
true.
anyone.
I didn't even
So,
think about that.
yeah. So, I mean, is he going to come back and it's like everything's different? And will he? I wonder if he will like help form like be part of the formation of the
First
First
order, yeah.
Order. So rather than like, okay, the Empire failed. Okay, we've got all these resources still. Like we've got some Star Destroyers and things like that. Um, like we'll use that, but we're going to start something new. And if somehow Palpatine connects with him some way through the, whether it's like that's like a
Uh-huh.
spirit, like a force spirit or something. I mean, because we know Palpatine returns in the sequel trilogy, so like
Yep.
he's kind of running the thing, running the whole First Order and everything. So yeah, I wonder if that's going to be part of it. If his like motive is like revenge as well. Like, I mean, he
Hmm.
just like wants to find those. I mean, Ezra is out there with him, and that's another thing I'm actually curious. Like, are those two like hanging out, or are they
Yeah.
like
Did
did
they
they
like get
like
to the
separate?
galaxy and separate? Yeah.
Right? Are they like just chilling on their own and like trying to kill each other, or is it like did they make peace with each other? And probably not, but
Uh-huh.
like that'll be so there's and it's just that this one's like a big mystery to me because it's hard. There's so many different ways when you break it down. So
Yeah, and it's interesting at the end of Rebels, right? The Purgles come in and they sort of wrap their tentacles around Thrawn, and Thrawn says to Ezra, he's like, "Whatever happens to me happens to both of us," right? And I feel
yeah.
like if they're off stranded in another galaxy, there's not really a reason beyond Thrawn and the Empire killing Kanan. I don't think there's a reason for Ezra and Thrawn to be at odds, really. Right? If they're really
Mhm.
stranded and there's no hope of getting back to the main Star Wars galaxy, I'm assuming they've either made peace with each other or gone their separate ways, which I think that's the
Yeah.
most likely possibility.
I I saw something crazy too the other day that the like that someone's theory was that Ezra is actually Snoke, which I know that was a thing going around back in the sequel trilogy days, and that
Yeah.
like somehow he's like out there and becomes more jaded and like tortured or some there's this something and I don't think they're gonna go that. I would be really
Yeah.
surprised,
I
but
would be shocked if they did that.
I don't know. It'd be interesting though.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel
Or
like
that they or if they use his DNA or something to create Snoke, that could be
somehow, yeah.
something I could
Yeah, I
yeah.
definitely think Snoke, like we've seen sort of an early version of Snoke in The Mandalorian in some laboratories,
Right.
right? So it's possible that Ezra, somehow his DNA or his midichlorians were used to make him. That's a pretty intriguing
Yeah.
theory, actually. Because, right, we don't know what's happening to Ezra way out there. We don't know if he's the same person that he was, right? I'm
Mhm.
assuming that, all that Kanan taught him, I'm not assuming he's turning to the dark side. But
Right.
it's interesting that we really literally have zero idea what is going to be the deal with Ezra and Thrawn, or if they're even going to
Yeah,
find him, if they're even going to find Ezra at all.
for
I
sure.
think I think it's interesting that we've seen Morgan Elsbeth, the Night Sister lady, in the command room of the Eye of Sion, and in the trailer when we see Thrawn's face for like a split second, he's in that room. So we know that the Eye of
Oh,
Sion gets to the other galaxy, and we pretty much have it confirmed that he comes on board at least. What happens after that,
yeah.
I don't know. And I saw one interesting theory that could be like him coming onto the Eye of Sion. It could be like the last scene of the show, right? The show
Hmm.
is basically just setting up for him to come in.
I hope not, but
Uh huh. And
he
I'm
the
you go
sorry,
ahead.
the actor who plays him um like he's in like the main cast list on like different websites, and so I imagine he's got to have a bigger role in the
Uh huh.
show than that. But I mean, well, I guess we'll see.
Yeah.
So
And I'm thinking if we do see Ezra, it's going to be such a big reveal that they do it at the very end. I don't think
yeah,
they find him next in episode 5, 6, or 7.
yeah, yeah, I
And
could see that happening too.
I'm so fond of Ezra, the character from Rebels, that I really hope nothing horrendous has happened to him, and that they get him back and he comes back and there's some story with him. But yeah,
Yeah.
I'm excited to see where they go with that. So I think that's about all the things I wanted to talk about Ahsoka. Do you have any more thoughts?
No, I think I mean I glad I could have this opportunity to talk about it. And I mean, I think the only last thing I'd say is just I'm really curious where this series will end. Like, what will be the ending point of it?
Yeah.
Because when like you think about like the sequel trilogy, like Ahsoka's not part of that. Doesn't mean she's not alive still. I mean, could be doing something other things, but like, what is that? Where is this going to lead to? What's next? Not that I know there's like a movie that Dave Filoni's doing that I think is supposed
Yeah.
to tie some of
Some
this stuff together.
Mandoverse
So
movie, yeah.
yeah, so I'm just curious, like the kind of like the chess pieces of where things will go throughout the series and what type of build things they'll be building up and and whatnot. So
Yeah, this series could definitely be a way of setting up more TV shows and more movies. And I think that's one of the awesome parts of it is we really don't know how it's going to end up or what
right.
how the story is going to shape up. But yeah, I think this has been an awesome discussion. I hope you listeners have enjoyed listening to it. Ahsoka comes out every Tuesday. I think there's what 5 episodes left, so we'll be having more guests on, discussing more of these episodes, and discussing some theories as well. So thanks so much for coming on the show, Thomas.
Yeah, thanks for having me. That was super fun.
All right, Battle Station Radio listeners, may the force be with you.